So good morning, everyone. We are in chapter Membet 42 of Sefer Yeshayahu. It's a fascinating chapter. Not that any of the others are not fascinating, but it also plays a very significant role in our annual cycle of Haftarot, because the majority of this parak is actually the Haftarah for Breshit, for Sefer Breshit. It starts from Pasuk Hey, and it is according to some, actually really a defining statement of the role of the Jewish people, of the faith, the responsibility. We encounter the terminology here of Or LaGoyim as well. In fact, Rav Benny Lau, in one of his pieces, talks about the fact that beginning with Pasuk Hey, we start talking about creation, and he says that when the Jewish people are referred to as the Or LaGoyim, in essence, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying is, I created the original light, and now you need to continue to create that light. It creates this partnership of Klal Yisrael, which is a beautiful concept, because in this parak it works perfectly, since it appears in this context of creation, of God as the Borei Olam. That's the piece. But as is true of many of the other prakim in Sefer Yeshayahu, it's made up of a number of different pieces. It's not all one narrative or one single prophecy itself. And so the first piece talks about a bit of a reaction. It starts with the words hain, that they. Now, where does the word hain come from? It's actually a continuation of the previous pasuk, the last pasuk of Perek Mem Aleph, where Yeshayahu had said, "Hein kulam aven efes maseim ruach v'to niskehem," where the Navi had said that they, the nations of the world, are nothing. Their actions, their idolatrous actions, are nothing, are meaningless. And so now, in contrast, in Perek Mem Bet, the Navi says, "Hein avdi et mochbo." They, however, the Jewish people, are my servant. Okay, and this idea of this contrast is Rashi picks up on it immediately, and they are my servant. The Ibn Ezra says, what does it mean, my servant? Rova the Meforshim, according to the Ibn Ezra, says very simply, we're talking about the tzaddikim of Yisrael, the people who are setting the tone within the Jewish people. Whereas Reb Saadia Gaon, he takes this in a completely different turn. He says, Hein Avdi. Avdi, in this case, he says, refers to Cyrus, King Cyrus, who's going to issue the opportunity for the Jews to go back. The Ibn Ezra himself says, Hein Avdi, singular form, again, Avdi. He says it refers to actually Yeshayahu Hanavi himself, whereas the Abarbanel and the Radak say Hein Avdi is talking about the Mashiach. So there's a lot of different possibilities of who this is actually referring to. The simplest, the most common, the Tzadikei Yisrael Avdi, and in fact, Julius Hirsch, in his commentary, goes one step further. He says, what does it mean, Avdi? He says, they are my co-workers. He translates Avdi not as my servant, but as my co-workers, that the Jewish people share in this responsibility, etmoch bo. Now, etmoch, tmicha, in Hebrew is to rely upon. And I'm relying upon him. Literally, supporting is a better word. Supporting, good. Now, interestingly, the Marikra says, etmoch bo, that God is saying, I'm going to hold him up. Zik bimino. I'm going to hold him. However, the Ibn Ezra says, no. Etmoch bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I'm going to rely on them. That I'm going to rely, now according to the Barbanel, the Radak, I'm going to rely on the Mashiach, but according to the most of the Meforshim, I'm actually going to rely upon the Jewish people. B'chiri ratzta nafshi. They are my chosen, the one who my soul has desired. Okay, again, B'chiri, the Jewish people. The Avdi and the Bechiri. Interestingly, Avdi Yaakov Bechiri, okay, doesn't have a specific statement, but the way Rashi would understand it, it's the Bechiri Yisrael. It's talking about the two sides of the Jewish people. The Malbim says that if you look at the two descriptors, the Eved is etmochbo. Eved is I'm going to be supported or support. That's the nature of an Eved. Eved al yadei avodato. An Eved's relationship is done by his work that he does. A nivchar one who is chosen is because of the choice or the desire of the chooser. And so that's why we have Bechiri Ratztan Nafshi. My soul desired, because that's when you choose somebody, it's somebody you want, somebody you want to have in front of you. Natanti Ruchi Alav, I have placed my Ruach, my Nevuah is the simplest explanation. Alav an, whether it's the Jewish people, whether it's on Cyrus, whether it's whoever it's going to be, according to the various explanations, we're going to, again, follow generally the majority opinion. This is a direct reference or conversation with the Jewish people. Mishpat lagoyim yotzi. They will bring out, or he will bring out justice to the goyim. Now, Rashi says what this means is, Rashi says the Jewish people will teach the nations of the world mishpat and tzedakah. We will be, by the way, our role as the Or LaGoyim is to bring the sons of justice within the world. The Radak says, no, we're going to judge the non-Jewish, the non-Jews, and we're going to judge them and bring them to justice so that warfare will stop. Remember, he's referring to a time of Messianic era. The Shadal says, no, that what it is we're going to teach them the law so that they will accept this idea of a single God, that we're going to bring to them the ruach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're going to help the nations of the world in that way. Lo yitzak v'lo yisa. And the way it's going to be done is without yelling and without raising of a voice. Why? Well, one possibility is because the non-Jewish people are going to want to learn from us. And that's Rashi. Okay, we won't have to call out to them. The Radak says, no, it's going to be brought, the lessons of the Mashiach, remember he refers to the Mashiach in all of this initial piece, are going to be brought gently. It's not going to be something that will be necessary, lo yisa in that sense. Okay, not just that, velo yashmiya b'chutz kolo. It won't be necessary, the voice of reason, the voice of this mishpat, this voice of this righteousness that we'll bring to the world will not be b'chutz kolo, is not going to be broadcast. It's not going to be the kind of thing where we're going to need microphones and megaphones and amplifiers to broadcast it outward. Rav Schwab says about this that what it really means is that we won't need a marketing. We won't need any kind of marketing plan for all this. This will happen very naturally, that people will turn to the Jewish people, or the Jewish people will be able to fill their role as well.
It's to say we don't need hasbara.
Right, which the Israeli people need today. They need that.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a very enlightening and encouraging Nevuah, but in light of today, it's extremely depressing.
Well, it just means it.
Start.
Well, we'll get to some of those contrasts in this parak also. We're going to talk about those problems that we have as well. And I will point out that it's true the contrast is stark, but remember, even according to Rashi, who says this is talking about the Jews' role in the world, we're talking about the Tzadikei Yisrael. We're talking about the righteous ones in the world. We don't have too many of those around.
The nation as a whole.
Well, it's because the nation as a whole is, if you remember from the previous prakim, we're talking about those who are going to continue this action, that it's not, unfortunately, there are going to be many who are lost. In the previous prakim we've talked about this, that the ones who are going to remain, it's
Get political, but the international court condemned Israel for doing the most, for genocide, thank you, when everybody who listened to Netanyahu has his words to go back to. That is the most ridiculous thing in the world. And here we have this, I'm sorry, going back to the contrast here is like, what?
Well, but on the other hand, you can also say, okay, there's hope. What we had, the situation of today is not what the Navi is referring to. He's talking about a future situation, and it's going to change. We will see some of the current situation in the parak itself. Kaneratzutz lo yishbor, there's a lot of different ways that we translate the word ratzutz. Ratzutz is something that's already been smitten, it's partially broken, it's weakened. Another possibility might be bent. Okay, in this kaneh ratzutz lo yishbor, it won't be broken. What does that mean? Well, Rashi takes the approach that when all of this is about to happen, the Jewish people are going to be coming out of the galut. The Jewish people will have been oppressed, as we see, for centuries, for millennia. The Jewish people will be oppressed. The Jewish people, in many ways, will be weakened. They may be weakened, but they won't be broken, is the way we would explain it according to Rashi. The Radak says, and again, remember, the Radak and the Abarbanel say this is all talking about Messianic era. This is not referring to the Jews. This is referring to the rest of the nations of the world. That because the Melech HaMashiach is going to be speaking with them gently, he's not going to have his communication plan. He's not going to have the Hasbara, as Ilana mentioned. He's not going to have those things. It'll be a calm, gentle, peaceful kind of thing. The nations of the world who will be conquered, who will be, in this point of transformation at the Messianic era, we're not going to break them. That's not the goal. They won't feel this. And also the faint wick, the fishta in this case is, fishtim is flax, but it was also used as a wick. And chahed is a dull, okay? In this case, it's that little bit of flame that still exists, won't be extinguished. Le'emet yotzi mishpat. That for truth will come the mishpat. Julius Hirsch says, Le'emet, and I'm just going to quote his words in English, Israel must educate by example. In other words, le'emet, if by the example, its task is to translate the law into reality. So le'emet's a beautiful concept. Le'emet yotzi mishpat. When people act with emes, that's the English word, the English translation of emet, when there's an emes and an emestic person, then you'll see the justice coming out. The way to teach people is by example. According to the Malbim, that what this is also saying, le'emet yotzi mishpat, that the Jewish people are going, even those who had sinned are going to be doing tshuva. This is a sense of saying that people will still come back to the truth. They'll come back and they'll have that possibility. Yeah.
So it refers to
Machloket, either the Jewish people in a weakened state when things begin to turn and hope is revived, or it refers to the nations of the world when the Jewish people emerge with strength and with power, and how we will interact with them.
So when it says lo yishbor.
Lo yishbor and lo yichabena. Okay.
Won't be
broken.
It's the object of the
So the question is, it's the kaneh ratzutz. It's this what was read, but what's ratzutz? A weakened read. I don't know how does Art Scroll translate.
Bruised.
Huh? Bruised. Okay. It's referring to that. Now, who that is can either be two completely opposite possibilities based on the Meforshim. It can be the Jews. Which means Aleph, Bet, Gimel is all the same subject. Rashi approach. The Jews will be weakened after centuries, millennia of Galut. And yet, at this moment, they're not going to break. They're going to be able to rise to the occasion. Le'emet yotzi mishpat. What? We are. That's Rashi. That's Rashi. We, the Jewish people. We are the reed that is breaking but won't be broken. Okay. The Radak and the Abarbanel, who say this is talking about messianic prophecies, well, in the messianic times, we're going to be on top. And at the messianic time, with us being on top, who is the one who won't break? They say it's talking about the nations of the world, that we won't. In essence, this is a follow-up to Pasuk Bet. Pasuk Bet says, according to them, the Melech Mashiach is going to speak softly and gently. It won't be necessary. There will be no sense of retribution that will be taken place against the non-Jewish people. Because remember, different than most religions, we believe that in the Messianic era, there will be Jews and there will be non-Jews. There will be a difference. There's a major machloket. Rishonim, the Rambam just says that the big difference is going to be, we're not going to be enslaved or enslaved is a good word. We're not going to be enslaved by other nations, and people will recognize God. But we have always believed, the Jewish people have always believed there is a role for the non-Jews and there's a role for the Jews. And we believe in righteous non-Jews. And it's not just those who saved Jews during the Shoah, the righteous Gentiles. We've always believed in righteous Gentiles. And we believe they have an obligation of the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, of the 7 Noachite laws, and we have an obligation of 613 mitzvot. Okay, but that's fine. We believe in peaceful coexistence. Many of the other religions of the world, and I won't say all because I don't know all the religions of the world, especially the pagan ones, but the large monotheistic religions believe that at the end of days, whatever their eschatological prophecies are, at the end of the days, you either believe like us or we get rid of you. Okay. And so that's a difference. When we look at, if I look at this from the Radak and the Abarbanel's position, they're saying, look, at the end of the days, they may be down, but we're not going to break them. We're going to find a way to raise them up so that they see through our example, emet, okay, Yotzi Mishpat, through our example of a just life, they will see the beauty of life itself. The next pasuk, and it's the last one in this immediate section, lo yich'eh v'lo yarutz ad yasim ba'aretz mishpat u'letorato iyim yeyachelu. That they will not, yich'eh, again, it will be, one of the translations is slacken, okay? V'lo yarutz, it won't tire. Okay, in that case, the arutz is ratzatz, resh tzadi tzadi again. Okay, is the shorish. Things won't be extinguished using the same verbs we had before. It's poetic, and so there's a certain level of repetition. Again, let me read to you from Hirsch. Hirsch says, steadily, quietly, Israel must never tire, never relax its efforts to spread the message of the tzedek ideal among its fellow man. Again, this is taking that approach of Rashi. Lo yichev lo yarutz. The Jews will never tire. They will keep on going ad yasim ba'aretz mishpat, until the world finds that sense of justice. Uletorato iyim yeyachelu. The Radak says that even the far off distant lands, in other words, iyim are islands, the far off distant lands, even them, they will find that sense of wanting to follow the Jewish example. And if you remember, it goes back to an early nevuah. The Radak quotes the early nevuah from Perek Bet in Yeshayahu, Valchu amim rabim, that many nations of the world will come to Yerushalayim. They'll be coming towards us to be able to learn from us. So that's the approach. Yeyachelu is they're going to desire, they're going to have this, that this will occur all over. And this, and again, we can always question how prakim are divided, even the parshiot here are a little complicated. This really belongs to the previous parak. The previous parak talked about how the non-Jewish nations are reacting. And these 5 psukim talk about, or 4 psukim talk about how the Jewish people will react, whether it's us as in relationship to our own potential, or it's us in relationship to the non-Jews, that there won't be any kind of retribution. Ultimately, there will be that role modeling that the Jewish people will take. Introduction, beautiful concept of our role in the world. And now this is the piece that actually is the Haftorah on Sefer Breshit. And you can obviously understand why it's a Haftorah on Sefer Breshit, because it starts out with Borei Hashamayim, okay, that that God is the creator. Okay, that's the opening kind of piece in this pasuk, but it's not just that. If Sefer Breshit, and if you remember that very first Rashi in Sefer Breshit, okay, where Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, where he quotes from a medrash, and all the third and fourth grade teachers say he quotes from his father. Okay, fine, but he quotes from a medrash. We have the medrash. It wasn't his father, but he quotes and he talks about the role of understanding who the creator is to be able to establish our rights for the land of Israel. That God created the land, he can give and take the land to whoever he wants. He gave it to us. It's ours because at some future date, the nations of the world will say you don't have a right to the land of Israel. One day that might happen. Now, in the meantime, it also, though, if you think about it, establishes for the Jewish people a sense of their destiny, of their responsibility. It's not just that first Rashi is not just a question of land ownership. It's our role. It's trying to establish our role. That's what happens here also. So Ko Amar Hashem, Hakel Hashem Borei Hashamayim V'notehem. Thus said God. We are now, Yeshayahu is conveying God's words. And God is the one who is the God, whose name is Hashem, who is the creator of the Shemayim, V'notehem. Now, V'notehem is an interesting machloket of what V'notehem is. V'notehem is, first of all, Hirsch himself says that Notehem, if you notice, it's, we start out, Borei Hashamayim V'notehem. Notehem is this plural kind of role. He refers to it as pluralis majestatis. Pluralis majestatis is the royal we in English. Yeah, it could be. Okay, so he says it's Notehem is Lashon Rabim, but okay, it's the royal we in common language is the pluralis majestatis. Took me a little bit to figure out what pluralis majestatis was, but it's not too hard. Rashi says that we need to understand that v'notehem, according to Rashi, notehem is borei shamayim. V'notehem does refer to borei shamayim. He stretched out the heavens, is the way he wants to explain it. Hirsch says no, that actually v'notehem are the horizons, is the way he translates it. It's an interesting translation. Creates the heavens and the horizons itself.
Or it's either a noun.
Or it's a noun. It's a verb or a noun. We're not sure what it is. And interestingly, in all of this, if you notice, it is, and this again, Hirsch picks up on this again. It doesn't say bara. It says borei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a constant creator. And this follows with what we have in Tfilah. God is constantly creating. Okay, it wasn't a historical event. There was a historical event of the creation, but the creation continues all of the time. Now that, by the way, immediately talks about, and this is where the Radak picks it up, that there were two different thoughts or theologies that existed in the world. One theology was that the world preceded God, that the world is eternal and a God was created. And so the first thing is by saying, the Radak says, by saying Borei Shamayim, no. God is the creator of the world. That's the first thing we have to set up. The other is when we talk about Hakel Hashem, why do we have that both God, it is the God, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, is the Yud Kei Vav Kei God, okay, is he is the one who is involved in the world, because there was another theology that God may have created the world, but that he stepped away from it. In fact, that was a theology that we encountered in modern times. Remember Harold Kushner with Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, the bestseller in the New York Times. Harold Kushner's belief was, don't blame God for bad things. Bad things happen. Bad things happen. People, God created the world, but he doesn't get involved in the details. Okay, and so things happen. It happens. Now we reject both of them. Both of those concepts. God was the creator and God is the involved God. So Hakel Hashem, Borei Shamayim V'notehem, Rokah Haaretz V'tzetzaeha. God also, in this case, expands or stretches. The Mitzudat David says, Rokai is inyan prisha. He stretched the land over the waters, and its growth, and that which comes out of the land. Noten neshama la'am. He gives a soul to the nation which is upon it. Okay, Rashi points out in a beautiful universal concept, because this is a very universal message that's going to be brought forward. He says, it doesn't say that noten neshama la'yudim, doesn't say God gives the neshama to the Jewish people. God gives neshama to lekulam b'shaveh, says Rashi. Everyone gets the neshama. Everyone, Jew, non-Jew, they all have it. Veruach laholchim ba, and the spirit to those who walk in it. Now, there are two ways to say it. Is ruach laholchim ba? Is that different than neshama? Again, we talk about this as parallelism, where we talk about when things are repeated in poetic forms. Is it just another way of saying the same thing, or is it something unique? And here, the Abarbanel says there is ruach laholchim ba, there's a ruach kedusha to those who follow his path. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only does he put a soul, but he gives you the spirit, the sacred spirit for people who are following in him. The Radak takes a different approach, and the Radak says, no, there's a difference between Ruach and Neshama. Neshama is soul. But Ruach is talking about, he gives Neshama to people. He gives his Ruach to the rest of the animal kingdom. That it isn't a Neshama. A dog doesn't have a Neshama, but it's a Ruach Chayim. It's life. No, because the Ba is referring not to Loholchim, it's not talking to God. Loholchim Ba, those who walk on the earth.
But earlier, earlier one for Shin that you were citing, said that in Ruach laholchim ba are those who walk in the ways of God.
Right.
Now he's talking about animals.
Right.
What?
Because what's the question is, what's the difference between Ruach and Neshama? Okay, Neshama is simple. Neshama is simple. I got neshama. Neshama is the breath, but we use neshama as the breath of a soul that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when talking about the creation of Adam HaRishon, God breathed into his nostrils, right? So the breath, the neshama, is a soul. That we accept. And we don't find neshama used like this as anything but soul. I'm not going to say, so the question is, what's the ruach then? So the Barbanel has to say I'm missing a word, a ruach kedusha. According, however, to the Radak, no, this is the ruach hayim. It's the spirit of life, okay, and that would be to anything else. But whatever it is, ultimately, what we're establishing in Pasuk Hey, God's the creator. God did everything, and this is an important theological statement. But it's not just for Jews. It's a theological statement that's universal in message. God created everyone and gave everyone a soul. Ani Hashem. I am Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kiraticha v'tzedek v'achzek b'yadecha. I have called you out in justice, and I am holding you, and I'm holding your hand. Okay. Now, holding a hand is pretty easy to understand. When you say I'm holding your hand, I'm supporting you, I'm helping you, I'm there with you. Okay, that's relationship. Okay, it's not just a Beatles song, it's relationship. But Ani Hashem Kraticha v'tzedek, what does it mean? I have called out to you. Who is the you? So Rashi says the you is Yeshayahu. God, Yeshayahu is conveying that God called out, God established who he is. He says, Yeshayahu, I'm calling on to you to do the following. The Radak, it's the Jewish people. The Mahari cried, Cyrus again. I have called you, and Rav Schwab says, I have called upon you for the purpose of bringing justice to this world. Ani Hashem kraticha v'tzedek. Okay, b'tzedek, I have called to you with that sense of justice. I need you to convey the justice to the world. And that's why the Radak says at the time of the Mashiach, what's going to happen, it's I want to make people understand I've called you B'tzedek, and you'll be able to go out without fear. God is saying, I'm with you. You'll be able to carry out your mission. Okay. Ve'etencha livrit am le'or goyim. I'm sorry, I skip a couple words. Ve'etzarcha, and I will protect you. Okay. Now, when I'm going to protect you, okay, I'm going to protect you because the message you're going to be bringing to the world is a revolutionary message. You don't need to, you've been afraid all of those years. Now you don't have to be afraid anymore. And I'm going to give you to a covenant of a nation. The Dat Mikra says, Hareini notenotcha ledugma la'amim livrit ben Hashem uven am. I'm going to use you as an example. I'm going to show the nations of the world an example of a relationship between a people and God. The Ibn Ezra says, no, I want you to establish this covenant of a nation. And what Hirsch says differently, Livrit Am, I want you, via the tzedek in the world, I want you to have Brit Ben Amim. I want you to have a covenant with others. I want you to be involved and engaged with the rest of the world. Le'or goyim. The goal is le'or goyim. Now, le'or goyim, we use this term all the time. We have to be a light unto the nations. A light unto the nations, as I mentioned earlier, Benny Lau has this beautiful piece that just follows up with the creation. Okay, I created light in this world. That was the first action of God. And now I want you to create the light of the world. However, Rashi, interestingly, shifts into a particularistic approach. And it's interesting in the sense that he says the or is the or the goyim. Who are the goyim? The different shvatim. It's not for the rest of the world. It's for the Jewish people among themselves. Shevet to shevet. But the Radak takes the Radak says, I want you to behave well among yourselves, in essence. Because if you think about it, Livrit Am Le'or Goyim, I think it's the Brit Am that's pushing him to do so. Because a covenant of a nation, doesn't say Brit Amim, covenant of a nation, and what's the covenant of the nation? Among yourselves. I think that's where Rashi's coming from.
Because nations hate us.
Well, but we're talking about a time where God is Ve'etzarcha. Okay. Boy, talk about people being impacted by the war. Where God is telling us He's going to hold our hand, and God is telling us that He's going to protect us, and God is telling us Or L'Goyim. And the Radak takes the more common approach for the rest of the world. Lifkoach enayim ivrot. I want you to be able to open the closed eyes. Now, who are the closed eyes? So there's again a machloket. Okay, the Radak says the closed eyes are your eyes that have been closed because of all of the troubles of the diaspora. I need you now to open up your eyes and see. Now, opening up eyes and see, well, you're seeing the greatness of God. So ultimately, Hashem is speaking through Yeshayahu to the nation, to the Jewish people, and saying, "Wake up, open up your eyes, see the greatness of God, do tshuva." Interestingly, Schwab says, no, this is talking about the rest of the nations of the world. That our goal is, remember, if I'm going to be the Or L'Goyim, I'm the light unto the nations, I want that light to illuminate the path of the non-Jews, the rest of the nations of the world. I want them to open up the eyes. Okay. Lohotzimi misker asir, to remove from the prison, the dungeon, the prison, the place of confinement, the one who was a prisoner, mi beit kela yoshvei choshech. From the Beit Kela, I want you to be able, from the jail, those who sit in darkness. The Malbim, as he picks up, says two pieces. There's a difference between masger, a confinement, and a Beit Kela, and a jail. Okay, he says that the Jewish people, the Shevet Yehuda, those who had been exiled into Babylonia, that the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Yehuda, they are considered like Asirim. They were the ones who are considered confined. Okay. They were impoverished, they were confined. However, mi Beit Kele, that's referring to the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, who aren't even seen anymore. That's why they're bechoshech. That's why they're in this darkness. He wants all of the Jewish people. Okay. Schwab takes an easier piece. Yoshvei choshech. Those are the people who haven't been enlightened, who haven't seen the light. But God is telling us time to wake up. There will come this time. Ani Hashem, Hushmi. One more time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I am God, but not I am God. Ani Hashem. The Yud K Vav K is that personal name. We've talked about it before. There's a beautiful piece in Rabbi Sachs's introduction to the Siddur, where he talks about the difference between Elokim and the difference between the Yud K Vav K Hashem. And he says, and his point is Elokim. The reason for the plural format, and this is based on the Kuzari, it's the forces of nature. We see God through the forces of nature. It's a powerful God. That's why Elokim is the God of justice, because nature doesn't distinguish. Nature doesn't have Rachmanis. What happens, happens. And that's why Elokim is the justice. The Yud Ke Vav Ke is the personal name of God. When you have a personal name, when you know someone by their first name, it implies relationship. Relationship causes compassion. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts out here and saying, Ani Hashem, Hushmi. The Yud Ke Vav Ke is my name. And I am the God. Versus, says the Radak, the nations of the world who go ahead and they have their idols. Says God, I'm the only God. It's just me. By myself, I am doing this. And as a result, Ukfodi la'acher lo'aten, Kodesh Baruch Hu says, my honor, my glory isn't given to, I won't give to anybody else. I won't give my praise to any of the idols. You want to talk to God? Talk to me. There's no one else who's helping me out. You remember the beginning, the Rambam always talks about how the development, not always, Rambam talked about how the development of idolatry occurred. Initially, they viewed the idols as representative of various attributes of God. As some, then it became more intermediaries. And then the idols took on to themselves that they were godlike in nature. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I haven't transferred any of my power to anybody else. I'm the only one out there. So he's the creator. I have called out B'tzedek. I want you Jewish people to be the light unto the nations. No, it is just me. Okay, I want you to wake up. I want you to see. I want you to be enlightened. I am Hashem Harishonot Hinevau. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, listen, all of the earlier things that were prophesied, that were going to happen. Now, the question is, who were the Rishonot exactly? Radak says the earlier prophecies of Yeshayahu, the ones about Sancherev, they've all come true. Rashi takes the broader picture, all of the earlier prophecies that I had given to Avram Avinu, the Brit Ben Abtarim, the covenant of peace, is where the 400-year exile into a foreign nation, they'll be able to come out, the redemption. That redemption, says Rashi, came true. And what's going to be in the future, before they've even begun to blossom, I'll let you hear about them. So trust me, because what was happened, what I said was going to happen, happened. That means what I'm going to tell you now will happen, will also happen. It's very similar to the end of the Gemara in Makot, where we talk about Rabbi Akiva. You know, Rabbi Akiva, at the moment where he sees the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, and he's with his colleagues, and they say Shualim, and they see these foxes running out from where the Kodesh HaKodashim was, the most sacred of places, and they're all mourning, and Rabbi Akiva is laughing, And Rabbi Akiva says, why? They say, why are you laughing? He said, because just like I now see that just like the earlier prophecies have come true, that the Beit HaMikdash would be destroyed, I'm now comforted to know the later prophecies will also come true. I see there is truth in prophecy, and they say, Nechamtanu Akiva, Nechamtanu. You've comforted us, Akiva. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, you saw the early ones? Now you're going to see the later ones. The Sforno has a little bit of a difference on this. Remember, Rashi says it's from the time of Avram Avinu. The Radak says it's the time of Sancherib, Yeshayahu's own time. The Sforno says it's the Nevuot of Matan Torah, that those were the Nevuot at the time of the revelation at Sinai that we're talking about. Okay. Now comes the next piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is, I want you to sing praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is going to take a few psukim. We're going to have Shiru LaHashem Shir Chadash, sing to God a new song. Now, what's the new song? Okay, that this is, if I take the Abarbanel, this is the Messianic song, the song at the time of the Mashiach. I want you to sing, so I want you to see that the nations of the world will see it. The Marie Kras says, no. God said, you sang a song when the Rishonot occurred, when the first set of prophecy occurred. When you got out of Egypt, you sang Az Yashir. At the splitting of the sea, you sang a song to God. Now is going to be the time when this happens, you're going to sing a new song. That new song that you're going to sing will be comparable to the song that you had sung at the time of Kriyat Yamsuf. And not just that, the praise of God will come from the end of the earth. Rashi basically, from the ends of the earth, all of the world will see God's gvura, his strength, and they will, everyone will be singing Yordei Hayam Umlo'o, from those who go down into the sea in its entirety. Now, Yordei Hayam, Radak says, the sailors, even people we talked about from the ends of the earth. Now we're talking about the sea, Umlo'o. He says, the Radak says it's talking about the fish. Now, it's a little strange to say what the Radak says. It's true. When I talk Haaretz Umlo'ah, I'm talking about the earth and everything created. So if I'm saying the sea and everything that fills it must be the fish. But how did fish get into this picture? Okay. And so interesting, Rashi has this wonderful piece. And Rashi says, okay, Yordei Hayam, fine. Those who are the sailors, okay? Yordei Hayam, meaning that it is different than islands, okay? Because we're going to get to islands in the next pasuk, or in a couple of psukim down. But what Yordei Hayam and Umlo'o is different. Umlo'o is talking about places which have a combination of land and water. And the way, and this is the Volchim Mibayit Labayit B'Sfinot, they travel from one house to the next with boats, Kigon Ir Venezia, like they do in Venice. Okay, so Rashi gives us Venice in here. In other words, Yordei Hayam Umlo'o, there are the sailors, and there are those unique settlements which aren't islands, but are like this combination of water and land. He's giving an example of Venice. He knew Venice. Okay, Rashi knew Venice. Okay, now the reality is, you might want to say this would be the equivalent also of, some of these places where you have those very close islands as well. Maybe, okay. Iyim v'yoshveim. Also, okay, the islands and the people who are living on the islands, all of them will sing this new song. So if you think about what we have covered here, we have the land, we have the sea, we have possibly the something between land and sea, and we have the islands. In other words, the whole world is the way this pasuk says. Yis'u midbar v'arav. Okay. The wilderness or the deserts and its cities will raise up their voices in song. Chatzerim teshev Kedar. Chatzerim, the people of Kedar who live in Chatzerim, that's what Rashi says. Okay, and he says actually, the Dat Mikra points out. So why am I mentioning Chatzerim Teshev Kedar? the people of Kedar who live in Chatzerim, the Dat Mikra says this is the land equivalent of islands. That these are the people, the Bnei Kedar, who were living in the equivalent of like oases. They were living in tents in the middle of the desert. So you talk about the sea and you talk about the islands. I talk about the desert and I talk about the places in the desert where there are where there's people living. Yaronu Yoshvei Sela, sing out those who live on the rocks, the outcroppings. Merosh Harim Yitzvachu, from the top of the mountains, they will cry out. This is the song that everyone is going to sing. Yasimu Lashem Kavod. Okay, what you're ultimately going to do is give through your voices the honor to God. Utilato be'iyim yagidu, and his praise will be told on the islands. Now, the islands in this case, if in the previous, if you think about it in Posuk Yud and Posuk Yud Aleph, we had every imaginable place, inhabitable place that could possibly be. Now, all of a sudden, we go back to Iyim. Iyim is the most distant place in the eyes of the Navi that they could imagine. A person who lives on an island, that is the most isolated, remote place. So when he says, Utihilato b'Iyim yagidu, it's not to limit it that the praise will be on the islands, but it's to expand that even on the most remote, isolated locations in the world, people will be singing the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem kagibor yitzeh. God is going to be goes out like a gibor. A good word for gibor is warrior. A warrior. Okay, a warrior, but it's more than a warrior. It's a successful warrior. Okay, God goes out like a warrior. The Barbanel says this is actually the song, this pasuk. Then what are they going to be singing? Hashem ki gibor yitzeh. God is going out like a warrior. Ki ish milchamot yair. He will arise. Yair kinai. He's going to arouse the vengeance like a person of war. Yariach yatzriach. He's going to be calling out. He's even going to be yelling the al oivav yitgaber. He will overwhelm. He will overtake his enemies. That's the Ibn Ezra said. The Barbanel says. That's the song they're singing. It's a great song. That's the song. However, there is another possibility. And this is what Hirsch proposes. Hirsch proposes that what's happening now is if I talk about the time of redemption, I need to be able to compare what happened at the time of the Galut, of the exile, versus the redemption. In the time of Galut, it was as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was missing. A concept we'll have of Hester Panim is the most extreme, where God hides himself. Now, says Hirsch, at this time of Geulah, all of a sudden, it will be that God is coming out as this warrior, as the protector of the people. And that's what the nations of the world are going to say, are going to see. Because what they thought, the nations of the world, was that during the Jews' exile, when we were being oppressed, during that time, the nations of the world thought, there's no God. Your God is gone. Okay, not realizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the choice of Hester Panim, whatever the reason was. Now they're going to see he's coming back roaring like a lion. He's going to be the one who's going to come back and is going to save them. So from the perspective of Hirsch, what it also goes back to is another theological argument. It's arguing against the non-Jews. First, we had the two arguments the Radak talked about, that God wasn't the creator, but the world was created before. No, God is the creator. And that God wasn't involved. No, God has been involved. Ani Hashem. Right? Now we have the other piece, that the nations of the world thought that God was in essence incapable or dead. And so now we're going back. No, God has been waiting for this moment. And when this moment comes, he's coming out as the Gibor. Then, ultimately, this is now when that happens. their God is going to come b'chema gadol with this great anger to be able to save the Jewish people. This begins Yud through Yud Zion. I don't know if we're going to get to the end of the parak today, but we'll get pretty close. Hechesheti me'olam. I have kept silent from the world. In other words, God chose not to be there in a public fashion for the rest of the nations of the world to see. Acharish et apak. I have chosen to be quiet, to be silent. Et apak, interesting, the Malbim says, Hashem is the opposite of speaking. So I have been voiceless, maybe. Macharish, he says, is the opposite of the what is it? Macharish is the opposite. I didn't write it down on tshuva. I think.
Well, lehitapek is actually like to actually hold back. You have
is the third. The third one,
right.
the Malbim says that lehitapek is to hold back the kol kochi. In other words, God
exactly
wanted to be involved. He had to pull himself back from saying something, from doing things. God's silence. That last verb is that God's silence wasn't easy for God. It was a conscious, deliberate, difficult choice that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. But now, Kayoleda Ef'eh, I will cry out like a woman giving birth, Eshom ve'eshaf yachad. There's a number of different ways these verbs go. The easiest of the ways are, I will breathe and I will hold my breath at the same time. The way the Dat Mikra takes it is very simple. God says that just like a woman giving birth is trying to control the breathing, or Hirsch says just like a person in pain is crying, and at the other time is trying to hold back and trying to breathe, all of those things. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says is he is going to do now. However, the Mitzudat Zion says, no, this is already a description of what he's going to do. Eshom comes from the word shmama, destruction. Eshaf comes from the concept of blia, I'm going to engulf or swallow. So there's a machloket on how to look at this. One possibility is to look at it, describing God's silence, his ke'ilu, absence from history, that it was a difficult thing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and now the time is over. Okay, now is the time where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's made a conscious decision. It was painful, but he's gotten past it. The other possibility, like most of the Rishonim seem to take, is God was quiet, and within the same pasuk, we already see the transformation. Now he's going to say something. Achariv harimuk vaot. God steps forward. I'm going to destroy the mountains and the high places. Mountains and the high places, it could be land masses. Hirsch says, no, this is talking about Harim Gvod, the upper class, the people who thought they were mighty, the ones who held them high. V'chol esbam ovish, and I'm going to dry out the grass. Those are the regular people. V'samti neharot le'iyim, I'm going to make the rivers into islands. Va'agamim ovish, and I'll dry out the lakes. In other words, this is going to be destruction. V'holachti ivrim baderech lo yadau, and I will take the blind ones along a path that they didn't know before. We had blind before. We had a machloket before who the blind ones were talking about. Before it seemed to be it was talking about God is going to bring the light, so it may have either been the non-Jews or it may have been the Jews. Here, Rashi says, no, the Ivrim are the Jewish people. God is going to walk them, is going to bring them from the exile back to the redemption. B'derech lo yadau, along a path they weren't familiar with. They had been in the exile. B'netivot lo yad'u adrichem. B'netivot. B'netivot. B'ntivo lo yadu adrichem, in paths that they didn't know, I will guide them. Holachti and adrichem are different words. Holachti is dispassionate. I just walk. Adrichem comes from the word to guide. Okay, lahadrich. Asim machshach lifneim laor. I will place there what had been before them as a darkness into light, uma'akashim lemishor, and I'm going to make the crooked paths into straight ones. Ela dvarim asitim velo azavtim. These are the things I have done, and I have not forsaken them. Now, it's a mixture of hoveh, okay, and of avar. It's a mixture of atid and avar, of future and past tenses here. The past tense asitim, okay, I've done it, v'lo azavtim, and I haven't forsaken them. So Rashi very simply says, asitim asem, I am going to do. This is in biblical grammar, modern biblical grammar description, it's the perfect form, meaning that sometimes the Nevi'im use a past tense to say that what is going to happen is as if it's already done. And therefore, the tense is past tense, even though the intent is future in that sense. And that's in Rashi comments. This is very common for this kind of thing. However, the Mitzudat David says, no, what it is I did this at the time, Asitim, I did this at the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and I'm going to do it in the future. And I'm going to velo azavtim. Hirsch says, I have never taken my eyes off the people of the world, velo azivtim, or given up on them. That God wants to make sure we understand this has never been ended. Nasogu achor, they've withdrawn to the back, to the rear, or retreated. Good. To the back. Yevoshu voshet habotchim b'pesel. They have been shamed, those who trust in idols. Haomrim l'masecha, those who say to the porn images, Atem Eloheinu. Those who say that you are our God. Now, one possibility, and there's three possibilities, let's say two possibilities for the moment. Rav Schwab says that when the nations of the world who are idolaters, they see all of this that has unfolded, they see the Jewish people rising, being the Ma'or L'Goyim, interacting with them, trying to work with them. They see the destruction of their great leaders who would oppose the Jewish people. They see all of this. They will be shamed of their former beliefs. That's a very positive, I would say, statement, even though the non-Jews are being shamed. It's a positive, they'll get it. The Dat Mikra says no, that ultimately they're going to, that the people who did not follow the path, Jews, the people who did not follow the path, those people are going to find the shame, which is a little bit of a harsher comment to the Jewish people themselves, that God will redeem us, God will save us, and that's going to be the story. We're going to stop here. There's a little bit more to the parak. It actually begins, okay, a new section as well, so it's a good place to stop. Next week, again, I think we have shir. I will know more in the next couple of days, and I'll communicate to everyone. If we don't, then everyone should have a very good day. You too.